Like Rachel Elspeth Gross wrote in Forbes, if one accepts the premise that the function of art is to evoke an involuntary emotional response, then it falls to reason that there are times and places when clothing, or costume, qualifies as art. Yet fashion, as an industry, is tainted with the sin of commerce. Perhaps the greatest proof of this can be found in what the Met Gala has become. The focus on a parade of celebrities in expensive costumes instead of the exhibition that the fundraiser opens. Exhibitions, which the Metropolitan Museum's Costume Institute has historically planned to provoke conversation about the current state of the world. Looking at clothing in the context of societal events is much more interesting than what the celebration has become. Costume collections exist at prestigious institutions around the world, and there are many lauded museums that focus the scope of their collection on apparel or accessories. Obviously, not every garment made is art, and with the pathogen that is fast fashion overtaking increasingly growing portions of the global apparel market, oftentimes what we wear could not even rightly be called craft. Talking about Met Gala, looking back, considering the span of decades that is the history of this specific party, one can quickly come to the conclusion that decadence and spectacle we cannot help but witness each year had a much more subtle beginning. The original midnight suppers were held in December, not May, perhaps in conjunction with the fundraising goal, as the last month of the calendar year is the last chance to transform profits into donations, a conversion that can have an effect on an entity's tax burden, which the Americans with the greatest number of resources have made their own art form out of reducing. Diana Vreeland created the concept of the fashion editor. She joined Harper's Bazaar in 1936 and remained there for 25 years, and the images she created are the most referenced in fashion history. She had a hand in everything, and everything she touched she revolutionized. Diana never sought out a job in fashion. She was born in 1903 in Paris. Her mother was an American beauty, her father an English aristocrat, and her early life was a Belle Epoque whirl of dandies, émigrés and artists. As a child she was passionate about Diaghilev and the ballet russe, learning the art of creating fantasy that would serve her so well in later years. At 20, she married the banker Reed Vreeland, and the couple later moved to London, living extravagantly on the $250,000 Diana had inherited from her grandmother. Diana was no beauty, as her mother repeatedly told her, but she became celebrated for her unique personal style. She was regularly in Paris being fitted by Coco Chanel and set up a lingerie business, kitting out the likes of Wallis Simpson with silk camisoles. When the money ran out, the couple moved to New York, and it was there, on a night out at the St. Regis Hotel, that Diana was spotted dancing in white lace Chanel by Carmel Snow, the then editor of Harper's Bazaar. Carmel offered Diana a job, and the rest is fashion history. Diana filled the pages of Bazaar with energy and excitement, nurturing photographers such as Richard Avedon, and discovering models including Betty Bacall. She loved clothes and was meticulous about her appearance. She admitted that during Second World War she wasn't thinking about anyone else's safety, only about making sure her manicure was perfect. She had people who would come to her Park Avenue apartment twice a week just to shine things, the soles of her shoes, her buttons, everything had to gleam. Her clothes were kept in tissue and plastic, and she would have them ironed before and after she wore them. Her uniform was black trousers and a black crewneck cashmere sweater. The accessories were the important thing, and she was always draping triangles of cashmere around her waist or her neck to go with her red python boots. She would spend the whole morning in the bathroom getting ready, driving her assistants nuts by sending them impossible memos as she dressed. She was difficult to work with, but a woman like Diana Vreeland was always going to have certain standards. The actress Ali McGraw worked as her assistant and recalled an incident when Diana threw something at her and she instinctively threw it straight back. "You are the rudest girl I have ever met," said Diana. She never showed her emotions, even though she had a great deal of disappointment in her life. She was overlooked for the job of editing Bazaar, but went on to edit Vogue, which at the time was nothing, just a little gift that C. Newhouse had bought for his wife. Diana made it into the magazine that defined the 1960s. She embraced high and low culture like no one else, putting photographs of Mick Jagger by David Bailey in her magazine at a time when other magazines wouldn't publish them because he wasn't famous enough. He looked fabulous, and that was good enough for Diana. Of course, most of the people she worked with loved her just as much as they feared her. And everyone was in tears when she was fired from Vogue in 1971 for spending too much on her extravagant visions, such as sending the model Verushka to Japan for a story and demanding she be shot with a sumo wrestler over 6 feet tall. For her own part, Diana cried just once, after losing Vogue. She was with the jeweler Kenneth J. Lane at the Ritz in Madrid and let herself go for a minute before pulling herself together. Likewise, when her beloved Reed died in 1966 from cancer of the esophagus, she wore white on the day of the funeral. She was celebrating their life together. There was nothing traditional about her. After Vogue, she became the director of the Costume Institute at the Metropolitan Museum of Art and put on sellout fashion exhibitions, but the curators would be frustrated because the way she displayed a Louis XIV gown or a 1920s dress was not always accurate. All her life, she took history and reinvented it. Perhaps some of Vreeland's mystique is related to the lack of exact details, the documentable sort, about major events in her life and career, and the quantity and quality of stories that differ in their telling, regaling those same moments from so many points of view. It is possible, maybe likely, that some of Diana Vreeland's friends softened her descent from Condé Nast by providing her with employment as a special consultant to the Metropolitan Museum's Costume Institute. Jackie Onassis and Babe Paley are among the names tossed around when anyone tries to explain how her position was funded at a museum operating at a dangerous deficit, a series of financial years which would continue to decline until it approached $100,000 in 1974, according to the New York Times. Of course, the world is different now, with technology that complicates as much as it purports to simplify. But the big things don't really ever seem to change. And fashion can still be art. Costume can as well. But without either, it is still possible to use clothing as a way to explain or discuss our past, or even the events of the world as they unfold. What is real has always been more intriguing to us than fiction. Surely there is a way to plan a party, even one that has so much depending upon the amount of money raised, that gives weight to the most important part of this event: the actual exhibition. Wouldn't it be more interesting to focus on that?